Hello and welcome to Newsmakers on CHCH Podcast. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I'm your host, Louie Butko, and today I am very pleased to be joined by Hamilton Ward 15 Councillor Ted McMeekin. Councillor McMeekin is currently in his first term as a Hamilton City Councillor, but has a long history representing the people of Hamilton, specifically Ancaster, Flamborough, and Dundas. First elected to Hamilton Council in Ward 7 back in the day. McMeekin would later move to Flamborough, where he served a term of 6 years as mayor before the Harris government amalgamated the surrounding regions into the city of Hamilton in 2000. He then served 18 years as a Liberal MPP, including as Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Minister of Community and Social Services, and finally Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And in 2022, McMeekin returned to municipal politics, winning a seat at Council in Ward 15. And Councillor McMeekin, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. You've done your homework.
I have. And I want to start there. What has it been like getting back into municipal politics? You think everything, bigger picture when you're representing your constituents at the province, but municipally, what has that been like for you?
It's been great. I can say quite honestly that being in cabinet was a piece of cake compared to this job. The detail surrounding municipal issues is fascinating. Every once in a while, you get to make a major decision on an entertainment complex or a recreation center or homelessness or what have you. But it's good to be back. In 1977, I was the youngest member of Hamilton City Council. I was still in my 20s. And now I'm the oldest.
Everything comes full circle, does it not?
Does, yes.
The nonpartisanness, and there's people like Councillor Clark, who is a PC, and there's obviously Mayor Horvath, who for a long time was the leader of the provincial NDP. What is that like, putting politics aside, leaving your party affiliation at the door when you step into that horseshoe?
Well, it's great. You're not having to cater to any interest group or any particular political philosophy. I sort of describe it as like the helicopter flying up above and looking down, and you see some ideas that might traditionally be seen as left of center, some right, and you can just pick and choose. You can sort of go with what makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What makes sense and what your constituents want, because at the end of the day, that's what you are. You are a representative of your constituents.
On a good day, yeah.
On a good day. So to that point, what are the issues that you're hearing door to door from your constituents in Flamborough? It is such a wide-ranging rural part of the city, but what are you hearing?
Well, the biggest sense that I hear every day is people don't mind paying taxes, but they want to make sure they get value for their taxes. We have some wards in the city that have 2-3 rec centers. We don't have any rec center in Ward 15. The bypass is a work in progress. It's been tied up in some environmental, Indigenous hearing issues. We need a new school, the police fire compound. Those are the 4 issues that I kind of focus on a couple times every week. And I just try to stay I don't like drifting away. I want to stay on what I know people care about.
To that point, how do you get the people of Flamborough, Dundas, Waterdown, how do you get these people to care about the issues that you do need to care about as a city councillor when it comes to the downtown core or the housing issues that we have downtown or the entertainment district that was announced today? Like how disconnected does Flamborough sometimes feel, and how do you get them to feel more connected?
Well, many feel very disconnected. The way you address that is by talking it out. Aristotle said many years ago, in fact, when I had a beer with Aristotle just last week, he said, if you want to know if the shoe fits, ask the person who wears it, not the person who made it. And so in my ward, Flamborough, Waterdown-Carlisle, Ward 15, I pulled together, with the help of some agencies who did the recruiting on my behalf, some 40 people to serve as a community council. And we've had, since the end of the summer, 3 meetings already. We have a number of other meetings scheduled. And they're not lecture meetings. We don't bring people in to just you sit and they talk. We engage. It's a part of the process. And we discover all kinds of things, roads you didn't know existed, potholes, you know.
There's always potholes in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We this year, we're patching up 72,000 potholes. That's good news. The problem is they're 310,000. So they'll go on. They'll
It's a
go
tough
on next.
numbers game. That's the math doesn't add up on that.
Next year's list, yeah.
We're talking, we were talking before we came on here last month. Actually, let's go back to September at a council meeting. The budget.
Yep.
That is going to be a big number. Obviously, a lot of Hamiltonians were scared when they saw 14%. A staff report says
14.2. Yeah.
14.2%. You had a motion to, even before you begin deliberations, you wanted to cap it at 4%.
Yep.
What was the need for that motion? Why did you bring it about? And we know it was defeated. So where do you go from here?
Well, it wasn't defeated. It was referred to a subsequent meeting.
Yeah.
Well, we're into, if I could describe it, we're into what I call the wow now generation. People want to be wowed, and they want to be wowed now. Public transit should be free, public and electric. Cost $47 million. The new station's already running $140 million over budget. You collapse the 30-year bicycle plan to 3 years at a dramatic cost. Homelessness is doubled since the pandemic hit. Food bank use is up 79%. So there are a lot of really pressing issues. I say to people, we're really a tale of two cities. Our mission statement officially as a city is to be the best place in Canada to raise a child and being the best place in Canada to age in place. I'm closer to the latter, but that's neither here nor there. Which is interesting when you realize that 41% of those in Hamilton who live below the poverty line are children under the age of 14. So here you've got kids, limited means but unlimited potential. If we don't break that cycle, we'll never be everything that the Maker intended them to be. You've got, we're living in a society where 21% of our people die 20 years sooner than the rest based on where they live and the social determinants of health. It's all known as Code Red, and it was noted about 10 years ago. In the last decade, it's gotten worse. So the gap between the richest of us and the rest of us continues to grow. And I say to my colleagues that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about how you care for the people who are in your charge. And everybody around that table, or most around that council table, including my wife and I, we could handle a 10% tax increase. But we're hardly reflective of the community we live in. Low income, a lousy tax ratio between industrial, commercial, and residential. So we need to be reminded. I say there's a difference between reading the writing on the wall and insisting that you're going to write the reading on the wall, right? Mm-hmm. I think we do need to do more reading and less writing.
Do you get the sense that because, and I'm going to include you on this, despite your experience, there are a lot of new faces on that council? 10 out of the 15 seats are, including yourself, are a different face than sat there last term. Do you get the sense that maybe there's a lot of ambition among these new councillors for these big projects, for these big social spending projects that they want to start? Because I've heard a lot that the old council has passed the buck. We have to do something now. We can't do it, because I've heard a lot from this council. How do you look at those 10 new faces, including yourself, and their vision for what they want to do on council and what's possible, what they can do on council?
Well, I like this council. There's nobody on this council that I don't have respect for. It tends to be to trend younger. I hesitate to say brighter, but I will.
Okay.
More articulate, more value-based nuance, a lot of concern. We have an environmental caucus, for example. We don't formally caucus, but there are 6-7 people who look at everything through a climate lens. We have a gender focus. We have a rural focus. We have a housing focus. We have, in fact, I kidded at council with the mayor that maybe one of my constituents' suggestions worth doing. Maybe we need a lens inspector There's so many different things driving how we make decisions. But it's a good council. And the fact that it was originally almost 7% tax increase reduced to 5.8, 14.2 is going to come in at 4. But I want to make this distinction. That will be 4% of the municipally charged issues. Some cost, as a result of Bill 23 from the province, is going, unless the Premier keeps his promise to make us fiscally whole, is going to add 3.69% to whatever we come up with. So, interest rates are rising, mortgage rates are through the roof, grocery prices are, more and more people. A woman the other day said, first time in my life I've had to rely on a food bank. And it broke my heart to hear that.
Well, we hear that more and more. We drive through the downtown. We see the people struggling. We've talked about Strawn, the tiny houses project at council. That has been a huge discussion. A lot of passion from both sides, and I think
I helped found that group.
You did.
I moved away from the group because I didn't want to be accused of having a conflict of interest.
So, what do you make of that? Because again, I find in Flamborough, Waterdown, it's easy to say, that's downtown. I don't have to worry about that. You obviously don't have the luxury because you're on council, and you mentioned we are all one city. So what do we do? Where do we go from here?
I'm a former minister of municipal affairs and housing. I wrote my master's thesis 50 years ago on how to eradicate homelessness in Canada. Nobody read it.
We would have solved the problem if we had just read your paper.
And when I went to get it back at the library, I was told that by the librarian that one of the developers took it out and never returned it.
Oh, jeez.
That was shortly after I was appointed. I guess they wanted to see what's this young guy think about housing, anyways.
Yeah.
So it's an issue, and there were ways we can do it. In Waterloo, for example, they had the Better Tent City, became the Better Cabin City. It worked so well, they won a regional award as the best community development group. People were learning job skills and learning all sorts of things. It was so impressive that the region of Waterloo invested $5 million over 3 years to open a second 50-cabin site on Herb Street. The federal government's invested in a couple of these types of units, options, right? They're not the answer, but they are a transition that we need to look at. Well, most importantly, there is a group of citizens with big hearts who want to get engaged, who've gone out and raised $600,000. They're not even asking for money, to do this. And all the city has had to do is find a site.
Well, and see, that's what I'm going to get to, because I have here St. Catharines, a temporary shelter with 50 beds is being set up. That'll be there 2 years. They referred to it sort of it's same setup that you would find in an oil rig community up north. These transitional houses
on a farm.
They just did it. They put it in. They picked a site and they did it.
Yep.
Why can't Hamilton do that?
Well, I wish I had the answer. I wish I had the answer.
Yeah.
I have presented a couple of options. There's a group in Waterloo that's being facilitated by Habitat for Humanity. 3 developers have come together, the regional chair, 3 regional politicians, all the NGOs, and they've committed to building 10,000 housing units for half the cost of the market and half the cost of rental accommodation. And they're committed to that. So I presented that. I've shared that with the city. They're looking at it, right?
Okay.
That's one. The other thing that is a possibility, the only time the city can run a deficit is if we're doing a capital project. So one of my suggestions, half tongue-in-cheek but very much serious, is if we want to eradicate homelessness and deal with Code Red and build housing that we need to build, affordable rental housing, why don't we borrow $500 million, quit being a slum landlord, and make it an issue. If we did it on city land with developers who pledged not to take any profit, just to pay their workers, with Habitat for Humanity, volunteer labor. We could do that for half price, and that's another thing we're looking at.
Well, I mean, we go back to your former career, your former portfolios. What do you make of Doug Ford's plan to build 1.5 million homes? As a councillor, you mentioned Bill 23, the effects that it's having on municipalities, just the downloading of things that need to be done. You know, the Greenbelt, we can get into the urban boundaries. I know you fought that quite hard, but what do you make of Premier Doug Ford's plan as it stands now, if we can determine that, on housing?
First of all, I'm glad I don't have to sit in front of that bulldozer I promised to sit in front of. Listen, I think we want to see housing built. The city of Hamilton will have no trouble meeting the provincial housing targets within the existing urban boundaries, which will, by the way, for every housing unit we build inside the boundaries, we add $411 in revenue in perpetuity to the budget. For every home housing unit outside of the urban boundaries, it costs us $914 a year in perpetuity. That's before you worry about development charges that have been waived, so that our already beleaguered taxpayers are going to be responsible for developing sewer systems, water systems, roads, new libraries, new schools. That's just not fair. We're the only government. Hazel McCallion, when I spoke to her once, I asked her her take on democracy. She said the federal government has all the money, the provincial government has all the power, municipalities have or will soon have all the problems.
Yeah, we've seen that. I mean, I've had Councillor Wilson on the show. Councillor Danko was on the show last week, and I posed this question to both of them. What is the relationship right now with the city and the province?
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good, and we had a long discussion the other day about asking our planning staff to come in with a summary of the things we've learned from this process. And I listened. I agree with that, by the way. That's a good initiative. I said, you know what? As children of the province, I don't like the moniker, but, as children of the province, maybe we should try to initiate a dialogue with the province about what we've learned and what they've learned and what together we can learn to do things better. So that rather than being seen as competing against each other, when we all have the same goal, we want to build affordable housing. Instead of fighting against each other, people can see us with a shared sense of purpose. And guess what? We might achieve something.
Well, when we see these MZOs that are overrided, we see, they go to tribunal and you fight them all the way, and here comes the province saying, no, never mind, we need these houses built. We're going to approve it. Is this Premier's not going anywhere? He's elected. The next election is set date in 2026. Yeah. Your council is set. How do you begin to repair that, and where do we go from here?
So many of the current provincial government policies are misguided. I was kidding the other day that on urban boundaries, it appears that they're going to back away from that. I said it's the 3VSA strategy. 3, very, very, very sorry. I apologize. The Premier, to his credit, said, I made a promise and I broke it.
Yeah. And
there's no health in me, and I want to fix it. I want to restore trust with the people. So I'm going to recommit to never touching the Greenbelt, right? Mm-hmm. And they brought in legislation to do exactly that. And not only that, but to prohibit any future government from doing it, to his credit. Mm-hmm. And so I, being one who's been around a few corners, I like to say to council, let's keep it in perspective. Maybe before we dump a pile of crap on the provincial government, we should say thanks. You had the courage to back away. We hope you're legit. We hope you've learned something from it. Let's examine together what we've learned and how we can do a better job.
You mentioned, we've both mentioned provincial politics here. Earlier this week, I had Nate Erskine-Smith on. Yeah. Next week, I have Ted Hsu coming on as well, as we're just a few short weeks away from the Liberal leadership candidate race, coming to a close in Ontario. What is the state? Someone who served 18 years as a Liberal MPP, a cabinet minister, had a great relationship with both Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne. It must have been tough. I can't imagine, 2018, what that was like, the exodus, your own loss. But what's the state of the Liberal Party in Ontario now as you see it?
It's great.
Yeah.
We have 4 candidates for leadership, any one of which would make a great premier. And I think the current governing party is conscious of the fact that they're going to be in for a challenge next time around. I like what I met. I met several of the. I know several of the candidates personally, and I'm very impressed. Yazir Nakvi from Ottawa, Ted Chu, Bonnie Crombie, who's the prohibitive favorite, whether that works out or not, and Ted Chu, of course, and. So we'll see what happens, or Erskine Smith, rather. I met him.
Yeah.
He came in to see me at City Hall.
Yeah, he was on our show. He wasn't here physically, but he was here a few short days ago on this show. So.
Very progressive. I guess the one concern I had
He talked about that. He talked about going after the progressive vote, because I kind of pushed back and said, you know, if Ford's popularity is because he is right, Bonnie Crombie maybe being center right is how he phrased it, and if, you know, looking at it based on the 3 candidates, he talked about the progressive vote, going after those NDP supporters. Would that be enough to win the next election? My
advice to all of the candidates was, let's not try to out NDP the NDPers. That's I don't think is going to work. I think we need to be left of center, right of center, whatever makes sense. But strategically, they need to be issues that we know people care about. You know, I was kidding about all the lenses that we look at things. I look at things by and large from both the municipal lens and an agricultural lens. Let me just share with you something about agriculture, food, and rural affairs. Did you know that agriculture and food area is the largest single contributor to Ontario's gross domestic product at $42 billion?
No, I did not.
Did you know that the ag food sector employs 814,000 people full-time?
In Ontario?
In Ontario?
I did not, no.
Did not know that. Well, see, when you know that...
I'm supposed to be the one asking the questions here, Councillor.
When you know that... Yeah, I know, I apologize. When you know that, and you know there are 375 acres of prime agricultural land disappearing every single day, you begin to think about food sovereignty. What happens when we can't feed ourselves anymore? You know, the supply chains are difficult. Maybe we don't get those yellow strawberries from California the way we do in the winter. You know, it's significant. It's a really important issue. We have the luxury of enjoying the best tasting, most nutritious, and safest to food eat in the world. Safest to food to eat in the world. Why would we do that? It's just so, once the land is gone, it's gone. Yeah. And we could become the breadbasket of the world. Lord knows the world needs a breadbasket these days.
Well, they're talking. You know, even today, Doug Ford made his economic update, or the finance minister providing an economic update at the province. They're talking manufacturing, EV plants, the investment in Ontario.
Critical.
But they did criticize the previous government. It said manufacturing disappeared under the previous government. How would you respond to that? That was a very specific quote in today's economic, as they take credit for the manufacturing boom, as they say.
Well, I hope they're right. I hope there is a manufacturing boom. But you got to remember, it cost us $750 million to settle the cancellation of environmental, solar, wind power projects that had already been approved by the previous government. Now this government seems to have come full circle, and they're now beginning to support things like battery plants, electric vehicles. Big investment early with the feds on the Ford plant was instrumental in getting that done. Good work. I think we need to stop and compliment that. In fact, someone said to me the other day, Doug Ford, he makes Flipper look like a goldfish. Which was kind of an interesting. I didn't get it at first, but Flipper's the little porpoise. Anyhow, but Winston Churchill said, if you can't change your mind, you can't change anything. So if they're open to changing their mind and embracing anew with those who share that sense of purpose, Lord knows climate change is the existential critical issue of our time. Every time I hold my 2-year-old grandson's little hand, I feel like I'm holding the future of the world in mind.
You mentioned the ability to change your mind. When did you learn that lesson as a politician? When did you realize that, you can't live and die by every issue? Is that something that did take some time for you?
Sure, it takes time. You go from, I used to be a New Democrat years ago. In fact, I was a conservative in high school, did the NDP stick.
Okay.
And
really went one end to the other and then
well, and
settled in the middle?
Then I got engaged with Eric Cunningham, who was one of my heroes, and I got involved, and I realized that money did not grow on trees. That I became, instead of an idealist without illusions, I became a progressive pragmatist.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you know what? When you can cross the floor, I got 4 private member bills presented and passed. 94% of private members' bills at Queen's Park die. We call it the black hole. They get sent away to die. You know why they passed? Because I had co-sponsors from each of the opposition parties. So it's kind of tough when somebody on both sides, other sides of the House, speak to your motion for the party to oppose it.
That's true.
So it works.
It does. Partisan politics can work. We've seen that, right? I mean,
well, if you have a majority, you technically can do anything you want.
And we've seen that the last few years.
That doesn't always work.
You mentioned holding the hand of your grandson there. What are you optimistic about when it comes to what you're seeing in Hamilton? What the potential of what Hamilton can be, but what's a reason that you're optimistic to get into that round table, to have these discussions for the betterment of the city?
Well, in addition to being at not that long ago rated the #1 hate city in Canada, we're also, and not very many people focus on this, we're the #1 per capita city in all of Canada for citizens who volunteer their time to build a stronger community. And I think that's important. I think we need to work hard at maximizing our advantages and minimizing our difficulties. And that takes discussion, the kind of thing that I'm trying to do in Ward 15. I say unabashedly to my community council members, many of whom still have some scarbage from the amalgamation. They say, what's your goal? I say, well, my personal goal is to try to help the newcomers in our community, or a very diverse community, and those have been around a long time, to not only come together, but to develop a mutual respect and ideally love for the city that I grew up in and love.
Have you seen the civic pride grow?
Yes.
How?
Well, the kinds of issues we're talking about, I think, it used to be we'd run away from homelessness, we'd run away from mental health issues, we'd run away from domestic violence, we'd run away from drug issues. We're not running away from that anymore. It doesn't please all of our constituents who prefer to see the snow removed and the potholes fixed. But it's we're called to. T.S. Eliot in his poem Choruses on the Rocks says, "When the stranger asks, 'What is the meaning of this city?' what will you answer? Will you say we dwell together to make money from each other, or we're a community?" Business is important, particularly when you have only a 14% industrial commercial to 86% residential tax ratio. That means 2 homes of equal value, one in Toronto and one in Hamilton. The one in Toronto pays, residential taxpayer pays 30% less. Why? Because the industries, if X is the foundational target, I mean, the residential tax, small business pays 1.9 times that, big business 3.9 times that. So if you have industry, like we used to have when Studebaker, Westinghouse, the 2 strong steel companies, International Harvester, where I worked coming out of high school, are all there. It drives your residential taxes down. Now that they're all gone, and much of the building that's going on is residential, which really doesn't put money in your pocket, particularly if it's urban sprawl. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You got a problem. And that's why amidst all the interest rate, mortgage rates, grocery prices,
Water bills.
bank rates, you name it, all the inflation that's going on. We need to be very thoughtful about the fact that as a community, we're not one of those communities that's endowed with having a more pleasantly placed in economic situation. We have a lot of poverty challenges, in addition to, and if the provincial government and the federal government with the subsidies for housing are only subsidizing houses $800,000 and up.
Well, I mean, those were the houses that were being planned on the Greenbelt, were they not? Were they, these...
We don't need Leave It to Beaver housing with white picket fences around it. We need affordable housing that in a dense setting, the more dense you are. That's the other challenge I have at Ward 15. People say, well, we carry the city. Well, we don't carry the city. We may not be getting value for the tax dollars we're paying, but it's those high-density areas along transit routes. Did you know? I was doing it to
That's okay. That's okay. I don't mind.
Those who live in condominiums pay 1.4 times the residential rate. So an argument can be made, particularly if they want to do it downtown.
Yeah.
To build, to build high rise and bring people to the core.
Yeah.
Resurrect business opportunities. I have 3 daughters, two of which run businesses in the core. It makes some sense to make those kinds of connections.
Well, do you get pushback when, I drive down Highway 5 quite a bit, Dundas Street, Highway 5, where we are here at Clapson Corners. You mentioned the interchange. I'd love to see that start anytime soon, by the way. Fingers crossed, especially someone who drives that road very frequently.
That's a multi-billion-dollar project.
It's huge. And, I think
it goes way north,
overpass.
Too.
Yeah. But do you get pushback from those condos along Dundas Street, the infill there that's happening, along Waterdown, even into Carlisle, we've seen some little developments pop here and there. Like, do you get that not in my backyard fight?
Well, we get some of that, not as much as I would have anticipated. What I heard when I went door to door in the election, particularly in the new areas, is we came to Waterdown because we liked the small townness of it. It's changing.
Yeah.
And the housing was 40% less expensive. But darn it, I don't want my teenage sons and daughters living in my basement for the rest of their lives. And by the way, where the heck's the neighborhood park the overzealous real estate agent said was just around the corner, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about community building, and you can only build community if you can bring people together, right? And I'm absolutely committed to this community council concept and hearing people out. And we're moving towards a situation where we're going to be defining problems, looking at a strategy, establishing measurement tools as to whether we're making progress, putting a timeline on it. And I'm hopeful that I could go to council at the end of every council meeting and hand out a 3-pager saying, here's the ward report. This isn't the councillor.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't call myself the councillor often. I call myself the caretaker. Right?
Yeah, someone else uses that title in Hamilton.
I know, but my job is to take care of this community, which many people feel has been a flyover zone for a long time. As I say, we don't have a rec center. Police personnel are scarce.
We've seen the impact of that too, right? I mean, you and I talked. I believe it was back in January. There was a string of car thefts. I believe it was you who fought for extra patrols up here. We have cops. We see more officers than we normally do in this part of town because you did feel underserved by police.
It's funny. I told one of my constituents who had their car stolen. The first thing I said is, "Are you okay?" Second is, was it insured?
Important.
That's important.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where are the police? I said, well, the police only respond if you're in danger, because there are people in danger they have to respond to first. But there's been an enhancement of policing through unmarked cars. And the woman said to me, I don't believe you. And I said, well, how can I prove it to you? She said, send me the license plates of all the unmarked cars. I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And if the policeman did that, he'd be fired from the force, right? That's
Yeah.
you know, and as far as I know, you could be one of the bad guys. You know,
You're trying to do the scouting there.
so it's tough. There's always a tension there.
Yeah.
Anytime a lot of change is happening, and it is in Waterdown in particular. The other passion I have is for the ag community, and I don't buy anything in a grocery store that I can buy at a farm market.
Yeah.
And every Saturday I tour 4 or 5 farm markets. I pick radishes up here. You pay twice as much, but that's okay.
The quality, though.
Yeah,
You're getting the quality.
Yeah, you know, you make friends. You talk to people. You ask them how it's going. I got a big heart for migrant workers and the people who are working with the migrant workers, who, by the way, have really contributed to building a strong farm economy, over $2 billion just in the Hamilton area of that 40 billion.
I grew up in Niagara, so I know firsthand the great work that the migrant workers do. You know, you see them on the trucks, and you see them out there. You know,
VQA wines.
That's it, all that stuff. Councillor, you and I could probably keep talking for hours. So we're gonna have to get you back here.
Oh, would you? I'd love that.
Absolutely, Councillor. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councillor McMeekin, my thanks to him for joining me on today's show, and my thanks to you as well, because we could not do the show without your support. Make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast. If you happen to be watching it, there's a QR code on your screen right there you can scan, or you can go to chch.com/podcast. My thanks to Mike Corsten for directing today's show, and once again, my thanks to you for listening or watching. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko, hoping you have a great day.